They came in the dead of night, slipping through shadows like ghosts with purpose. 3 men, dressed in silence, boots softened with rags, moved toward the barn on Silas Ward's land. The moon was low, veiled behind clouds, casting just enough light to reveal outlines but not intentions. Inside the barn, everything was quiet. The horses slept, still as carved wood, and Sterling stood in the farthest stall, unmoving, his head lowered like always. From a distance, he looked lifeless, like a statue forgotten in a corner of the world. But Sterling was never truly still. He was waiting. Silas had just extinguished the last lantern in his home when he heard it. A creak, too deliberate to be the wind. A whisper of movement, too precise to be natural. He stood at the window, holding his breath, and watched the dark figures move across his land with a confidence that sent a chill down his spine. The first man reached the barn door and eased it open with a slow, careful pull. The hinges barely groaned. He motioned for the others to follow. They slipped inside, guided by memory, not light. One held a rope. Another held something darker intent. The third man stayed back, guarding the door. They moved directly toward Sterling's stall. No hesitation. They knew exactly who they had come for. The man with the rope crouched low, whispering under his breath. Just a horse. Just a broken, useless thing. He reached for the latch, thinking the beast would not resist. Sterling did not move. Not until the moment the latch clicked. Then, with a speed no one expected, the Mustang's head rose. His eyes locked on the intruders. Ears pricked forward. Muscles coiled. And then, without a sound, he moved. The gate exploded outward as Sterling lunged. The man nearest to him took the full force of a blow to the chest, his breath leaving him in a guttural grunt as he hit the barn wall. The second man stumbled, reaching for a weapon too slowly. Sterling was already there. His hooves struck with accuracy that belonged to a creature trained, not tamed. The second man dropped like a sack of grain. The third man turned to flee, but found Sterling blocking the exit before he could scream. What followed was not panic, it was a lesson in precision. Sterling did not maim. He disabled. One swift kick to the leg sent the final intruder collapsing, clutching his knee in agony. Only then did Sterling stop. He stood in the center of the barn, breathing heavy, but unbroken. The light from the moon finally filtered through, illuminating not a broken animal but a warrior. Silas arrived seconds later, rifle in hand. But the fight was already over. 3 men groaned on the floor, rope discarded, tools scattered. Sterling stood over them like a sentinel, watching without fear, without anger, only certainty. Silas had no words, only the growing understanding that this horse had a history no one could see. When the sheriff arrived just before sunrise, he surveyed the damage in silence. Silas explained what happened, slowly, carefully, without embellishment. The sheriff squatted near a set of hoof prints and rubbed his chin. "You telling me that horse did all this by himself?" Silas nodded. The sheriff said nothing more. They searched the men, found cloth soaked in chemicals meant to sedate, found a folded photo in one man's pocket. Sterling, unmistakably younger, standing beside a uniformed soldier. On the back, a name neither Silas nor the sheriff recognized read back beneath it. A word scribbled in haste, retrieve. The sheriff pocketed the photo and stood, his face unreadable. "This is bigger than either of us, Silas." Silas looked toward the barn. Sterling was already back in his stall, motionless once again, head lowered like nothing had happened. But his ears were turned, listening. Always listening. Silas could not sleep that night. Even with the sheriff's promise to file a full report, to investigate the men who had come in the dark, something gnawed at his thoughts. He sat by the fire, staring into the flames, while outside, Sterling stood watch beneath the stars like a shadow that never blinked. At dawn, Silas returned to the barn. The other horses stirred as he entered, but Sterling did not move. Silas stepped closer, speaking gently. "You knew they were coming. You were ready." Sterling lifted his head, meeting Silas's gaze with an intensity. That felt more like understanding than instinct. Silas noticed something in the straw near Sterling's feet. A small black pouch, leather worn at the edges. He picked it up and carefully opened it. Inside was a folded piece of paper-thick, old, almost waxed. He unfolded it slowly, and there, in faded ink, was a set of coordinates, numbers, longitude, latitude, a location. Beneath the coordinates was a single word: return. Silas held the paper in shaking fingers. This was no accident. This was not a rescue gone wrong. Sterling had once been part of something far larger than any auction yard or broken-down barn. He had been part of a mission, a purpose, a design. Later that morning, Silas brought Sterling out to the open pasture. The horse walked without a limp, without hesitation. He moved with calm purpose, as if every step was measured, every direction chosen. Silas watched him closely and realized something deeper. Sterling had never been running away. He had been running toward something. Or someone. Mercy Whitmore drove by in her wagon around noon. She stopped by the fence and leaned on the rail. "Heard about what happened," she said quietly. "People are talking. They say that horse is not natural." Silas did not respond right away. He simply watched as Sterling stood tall in the distance, scanning the horizon. Mercy looked down at the dirt, then back up at Silas. "I was wrong about him," she said. "Whatever he is not just a horse." Silas nodded slowly. "No," he replied.